A girl and her dog asterisk. A girl and her dog find a destroyed police car in the middle of the snow asterisk. They call for help, but soon realize that this was no ordinary accident asterisk. What begins as a rescue turns into a much bigger problem asterisk. And now, even they are in danger for getting involved where they shouldn't have asterisk. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know what city you're watching from. We'll continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. Asterisk Emily arrived in Pineville, carrying a heavy backpack on her shoulders and an emptiness in her heart she couldn't explain. At 12 years old, she already knew well the meaning of the word new beginning. After her father accepted a transfer to this small rural town, far from the city, all she had were memories of the place she called home and her faithful four-legged companion Rusty, a mixed-breed dog with floppy ears and cinnamon-colored fur that carried the scars of a difficult life before being rescued by her 5 years ago asterisk. The winter in that region was harsh, very different from the big city where she had always lived. The mountains surrounding tiny Pineville seemed like vigilant sentinels, silent witnesses to the arrival of the new residents. Emily didn't want to be there, but her father, Robert, insisted that this change was necessary after his removal from the city police force for reasons he refused to fully explain asterisk. On that July morning, the sky was heavy with grey clouds that promised the first snowfall of the year. Emily put on her warmest coat, attached Rusty's leash, and decided to explore the surroundings of the house she would now call home, a modest building near the road that cut through the mountain. "Come on, boy. We need to get to know our new territory," she said, adjusting the wool hat over her dark hair that fell in rebellious curls onto her shoulders. Asterisk Rusty, despite his advanced age, maintained an attentive and protective look. It was as if he perfectly understood his young owner's insecurities. Together they walked along the dirt road that led to the pine forest. The cutting cold made both their breaths form small clouds of vapor in the air. Asterisk. That quote is when Rusty stopped abruptly. His ears perked up in alert, and he began to sniff the air intensely. "What is it, boy?" Emily asked, gently pulling the leash. Asterisk without warning. The dog began to pull forcefully, practically dragging Emily down a side path that descended toward a ravine. She tried to resist, but Rusty seemed determined, barking insistently as he advanced. "Rusty, stop! Where are you taking me?" That's when Emily saw it. At the bottom of the ravine, partially covered by snow, was an overturned police car. Vapors were still rising from the crumpled hood, indicating the accident was recent. Emily felt her heart race. "Oh my God!" she exclaimed, instinctively taking a step back. Her first impulse was to run and seek help, but Rusty continued pulling her toward the vehicle. Asterisk. Cautiously, she descended the slippery slope, holding onto small bushes to maintain her balance. As she approached the car, she saw an unconscious man trapped behind the wheel. The officer, approximately 30 years old, had a cut on his forehead and his breathing formed small clouds in the frigid air. Asterisk. The initial fear gave way to urgency. Emily released Rusty's leash. "Go, Rusty! Get help! Go!" Asterisk. As if perfectly understanding the command, the dog raced up the slope, quickly disappearing among the trees. Emily approached the vehicle, trying to assess the situation. The officer was alive, but his pale skin and slightly blue lips indicated he might be suffering from hypothermia. "Sir, can you hear me?" Emily called, but received no response. Asterisk. She tried to open the driver's door, but it was jammed due to the impact. The snow was beginning to fall more heavily, covering the ground around them with a white blanket that grew thicker by the minute. Emily knew she needed to do something, or the man wouldn't survive the cold. Asterisk. While thinking of a solution, she heard barking and the sound of hurried footsteps coming down the slope. Rusty was returning, and behind him came a tall man with a strong build, wearing work clothes stained with grease. "My God, what happened here?" asked the stranger, approaching quickly. "We found him like this," replied Emily, relieved she was no longer alone. "I think he has hypothermia." Asterisk. The man introduced himself quickly. I'm Mike, the town mechanic. Your dog appeared at my garage, barking desperately, as if wanting to guide me here. Mike quickly examined the situation, checking the officer's vital signs with experienced hands. He's alive, but we need to get him out of here fast. The temperature is dropping and this snowstorm is going to get worse. With a calculated movement, Mike managed to force open the dented door. He carefully checked if the officer had any spinal injuries before removing him from the vehicle. What's your name? Little one. Emily, and this is Rusty. Well, Emily, you and Rusty saved this man's life today. I'll need your help to carry him to my car parked up there. Together, they transported the unconscious officer up the slippery slope. The snow was falling more intensely now, making visibility and movement difficult. Halfway up, a fallen trunk blocked their path. We'll have to go around, said Mike, adjusting the weight of the officer on his shoulders. But Rusty had another idea. The dog began digging in the snow around the trunk, exposing an opening underneath, large enough for them to crawl through. Your dog is amazing, Mike commented, impressed. With great effort, they managed to pass through the obstacle and finally reached Mike's car. They settled the officer in the back seat, covering him with an emergency blanket that Mike kept in his trunk. Let's take him to the hospital right now, said Mike, starting the engine. The road is dangerous with this snow, but we have no choice. During the journey, Emily remained in the back seat, monitoring the officer, while Rusty stayed alert in the passenger seat. The road was slippery, and Mike drove with extreme caution, trying to avoid skidding on the sharper curves. He's starting to shiver, observed Emily, concerned. That's good. It means his body is responding to the cold. Keep talking to him. Try to keep him conscious. Emily held the officer's hand, which was ice cold, and began to speak. Everything will be okay, sir. We're taking you to the hospital. Hang in there. To her surprise, the man slightly squeezed her hand, as if responding to the stimulus. His eyes opened briefly, confused and disoriented. Luke. My name is Luke, he murmured before lapsing back into unconsciousness. After what seemed like an eternity, they finally arrived at the small Pineville hospital. Mike braked abruptly at the emergency entrance and ran inside, returning seconds later with a medical team and a stretcher. It looks like he suffered moderate hypothermia and possibly has some fractured ribs, explained a middle-aged female. Doctor, as she quickly examined the officer, you brought him in just in time. While Luke was taken inside, Emily, Mike and Rusty remained in the waiting room. The dog strategically positioned himself near the emergency doors like a silent guardian. How did you and your dog find him? Asked Mike. Breaking the silence. Emily explained about the morning walk and how Rusty had sensed something wrong, guiding her to the crashed police car. Newcomers to town and already involved in heroic rescues, Mike commented with a slight smile. Where did you come from? From the city. My dad was transferred here. He was a police officer there, but now he's working on something else. Mike nodded, not asking more questions, sensing the girl's discomfort when talking about the subject. Hours passed until a doctor came to inform them that Luke was stable, but would remain hospitalized for observation. It was then that the hospital doors opened, and a man of about 40 with a worried expression entered hurriedly. Robert? Mike stood up, surprised. Emily looked at the newcomer with wide eyes. It was her father. Robert froze upon seeing his daughter in the hospital waiting room. His eyes, normally gentle, now revealed a mixture of surprise and concern. Emily, what are you doing here? He asked, quickly approaching. His eyes moved from Emily to Mike, seeking explanations. Dad, Rusty found an injured police officer in the ravine near our house. He was unconscious inside an overturned police car. If it weren't for Mike... Robert hugged his daughter tightly, interrupting her explanation. Are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm fine, Dad, but the officer... His name is Luke. He's hospitalized. Robert exchanged a meaningful look with Mike, who nodded discreetly. There was something unspoken hanging in the air, a tension that Emily, even young, could perceive. You know Mike? Asked Emily, curious. Yes, we met a few days ago when I took the car to his garage for service, Robert answered evasively. Mike, thank you for looking after my daughter. Your daughter and that extraordinary dog are the real heroes, replied Mike, patting Rusty's head, who wagged his tail, satisfied with the recognition. A doctor approached, interrupting the conversation. Are you relatives of Officer Luke Matthews? No, we're the people who found him, explained Mike. How is he? Stable. Besides the hypothermia, he suffered some rib fractures and a mild concussion, but he'll recover completely. The doctor paused, looking at Robert with curiosity. Aren't you the new resident? The ex-police officer from the city? Asterisk. Robert nodded, visibly uncomfortable with the identification. Yes, that's me. Interesting. Officer Matthews was delirious while we were treating him and mentioned your name several times. Robert's eyebrows rose in surprise. My name? Are you sure? Absolutely. He kept repeating, I need to talk to Robert Taylor. He needs to know. Robert paled slightly. Emily observed the change in her father's demeanor, who now seemed distant, lost in thought. When can we speak with him? Asked Robert, regaining his composure. Tomorrow, probably. For today, he needs rest. After the doctor walked away, Robert turned to Emily. Let's go home. You need to rest after all this. But Dad, can't we stay a little longer? What if Luke wakes up and needs something? Emily, it's getting late, and you've been through a lot today. Mike, could you give us a ride? We came by taxi. On the way home, the silence inside the car was heavy. Emily watched the snow-covered landscape through the window, while Rusty dozed in her lap, exhausted from the eventful day. When they finally arrived at the modest house they had rented on the outskirts of town, Robert thanked Mike and exchanged a few words with him in a low voice, away from Emily's ears. Once inside the house, while preparing hot chocolate for his daughter, Robert seemed thoughtful, almost absent. Dad, why was Luke saying your name at the hospital? Do you know each other? Robert sighed, placing the steaming mug in front of his daughter. Not personally, but I worked on a case in the city that might be related to something he was investigating here. What case? Is that why we moved here? Emily, these are complicated matters, adult things you don't need to worry about. Dad, I'm not a child anymore. Rusty and I found a police officer nearly dying today. I think I deserve to know what's going on. Robert studied his daughter's determined face. Emily had always had a maturity beyond her years, especially after her mother had passed away 3 years ago, victim of a sudden illness. You're right, he finally conceded. In the city, I was investigating a network distributing adulterated medications, fake drugs that were being sold as genuine. I managed to identify some of those involved, but when I got too close to the head of the operation, I was removed from the case under false allegations of irregularities in the investigation. Is that why you left the police? Yes, I had 2 options: accept the removal and transfer to a small town, or face disciplinary proceedings based on fabricated accusations. I chose to come here, to start over, to protect you. Emily processed the information, her eyes reflecting the soft light of the living room lamp. And Luke? Was he investigating the same thing here in Pineville? Maybe. Pineville has one of the largest medication distributors in the region, Nova Pharma. Its owner, Augustus Miller, is considered a local benefactor, sponsors charity events, finances the hospital renovation. But there are also rumors about questionable practices behind the scenes. Emily's face lit up with a sudden idea. She ran to her backpack and took out a small, shiny object. What's that? Asked Robert. It's a protection amulet that Grandma gave me before she died. I want to give it to Luke, to protect him while he recovers. Robert smiled, moved by his daughter's gesture. That's a beautiful gesture, Emily. The next morning, Emily insisted they visit Luke at the hospital. When they arrived, they were informed that the officer had been transferred to a private room and was conscious, although still weakened. When they entered the room, Luke was sitting in bed, his arm connected to an IV. his face lit up upon seeing. "Robert? Taylor, I can't believe it's you. When they told me you were in town—" "Hello, Luke. This is my daughter, Emily, and the hero dog, Rusty. They're the ones who found you yesterday." Luke smiled at Emily. "So you're the little heroine. The doctor said if it wasn't for you and your dog, I wouldn't have survived that cold." Emily approached shyly, extending the small silver star-shaped amulet. "I brought this for you. It's a protection amulet. I think you'll need it." Luke accepted the gift, visibly moved. "Thank you, Emily. I'll treasure it." Robert asked Emily to wait outside with Rusty for a few minutes. When they were alone, Luke spoke in a low voice. "Taylor, it wasn't an accident. Someone tampered with the police car's brakes. I was investigating. Nova Pharma. I discovered they're using charity events as a front to distribute adulterated medications. Augustus Miller is not the philanthropist everyone thinks." Robert felt a shiver run down his spine. "Same operation. Different town." "Exactly. When I found out you were in town, I tried to contact you. Your investigation in the city was interrupted because you were getting too close. They have people infiltrated everywhere." "Why were you on that road yesterday?" "I received an anonymous tip about a suspicious shipment that would pass through there. When I arrived, I realized it was a trap. The brakes failed on the curve." Before they could continue the conversation, a nurse entered to check Luke's vital signs. Robert took the interruption as an opportunity to join his daughter in the hallway. While they waited, Emily played distractedly with Rusty, who suddenly became alert, his ears perked up, sniffing the air. "What is it, boy?" asked Emily, noticing the change in the animal's behavior. Rusty began pulling her down the corridor until they stopped in front of a window overlooking the hospital parking lot. Emily looked outside and saw a man in a dark suit photographing her father's car. "Dad!" called Emily, alarmed. When Robert joined her at the window, the man had already disappeared, but Rusty remained restless, growling softly. "What did you see, Emily?" "A man taking pictures of our car. He was wearing a dark suit and had a gold emblem on his chest." Robert recognized the description immediately. "The Nova Pharma logo." That afternoon, upon returning home, Robert was visibly worried. The snowstorm had diminished, but the sky remained grey and threatening. While Robert checked the locks on the doors and windows, Emily noticed that Rusty seemed agitated again, sniffing insistently around the family truck. "Dad, Rusty is acting strange again." Robert approached, observing the animal's behavior. Rusty was focused on the lower part of the vehicle, barking occasionally. "Step back, Emily," instructed Robert, kneeling to examine what had caught the dog's attention. That S when he found it, a small magnetic device fixed to the chassis of the car, discreetly blinking. "What is that, Dad?" asked Emily, carefully approaching. "A tracker," replied Robert, carefully removing the device. "Someone wants to know where we're going." Robert's expression hardened. "Emily, we need to be very careful from now on. It seems our past has found us in Pineville." That night, as Emily tried to sleep, she heard her father on the phone in the living room. His voice was low and tense. "Mike, we need to meet. The situation is more serious than we thought. They've already started monitoring us and tried to silence Luke. I think we're dealing with the same organization I faced in the city, and now they know we're together." Emily hugged Rusty, who slept beside her bed. "What are we getting into, buddy?" she whispered, as the snow began to fall again outside, covering the small town of Pineville with a white blanket that hid increasingly dangerous secrets. The next morning, Emily awoke to the sound of voices coming from the living room. As she silently approached, she recognized Mike talking to her father in a concerned tone. Rusty, always alert, accompanied Emily, staying close to her leg like a faithful guardian. "If they know we're connected, it won't take long for them to start pressuring in other ways," Mike was saying, running his hand through his hair in a gesture of nervousness. "We need to find out who's leaking information within the local police," responded Robert. "Did Luke trust anyone at the station who might help us?" Emily entered the living room, making the two men immediately interrupt. their conversation. "Good morning," she said, observing the papers scattered on the coffee table. "Emily, dear, you're up already?" said Robert, trying to disguise the tension. "Mike came to have coffee with us." "You're talking about Luke and the fake medicines, aren't you?" asked Emily directly. Surprising both adults, Robert and Mike exchanged glances. It was Mike who finally broke the silence. "Your daughter is perceptive, Robert." "More than I'd like sometimes," Robert responded with a resigned sigh. "Emily, we're trying to understand what's happening, but it's a complicated and potentially dangerous situation." "I want to help," Emily stated with determination. "Rusty and I already saved Luke once. We can do more." Robert knelt to be at eye level with his daughter. "Emily, I know you want to help, but this isn't a game. These people are dangerous." "But, Dad, nobody would suspect a 12-year-old girl and her dog. We can observe things that you can't." Mike, who had remained silent, cleared his throat. "She has a point, Robert. Nova Pharma frequently organizes charity events, including at schools. Emily could have access to information without raising suspicions." "Absolutely not," exclaimed Robert, standing up. "I won't put my daughter in danger." Emily crossed her arms, determined. "Dad, I've been involved since the moment we found Luke, and if Mike is right, I can help in ways you can't." The discussion was interrupted by the ringing phone. Robert answered, his expression quickly changing to concern. "We're coming right now," he said before hanging up. That was from the hospital. "Luke is having a strange reaction to the medications. They say he's delirious, repeating that he can't trust anyone." Tarak. On the way to the hospital, the atmosphere inside the car was tense. Emily held Rusty in her lap, stroking his fur to calm him. The dog seemed to sense the anxiety that hung in the air, remaining alert, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Upon arriving at the hospital, they were greeted by a middle-aged female doctor with a serious expression. Officer Matthews had an adverse reaction to the medication administered this morning. "We're running tests to understand what happened." "Can I see him?" asked Robert. "He's sedated now. But there's something strange I'd like to show you." The doctor led them to a small office and closed the door. "My name is Dr. Helen. I've worked here for 20 years, and I've never seen a reaction like this to a common pain medication. So, I decided to check the batch of the medication." She placed two seemingly identical packages on the table. "This is the original packaging of the analgesic, and this," she pointed to the second box, "is the one that was being used in Officer Matthews' room. At first glance, they're identical, but observe the batch number." Robert and Mike leaned in to examine the packages. "The barcode is different," observed Mike. "Exactly. And more importantly, this batch number," she pointed to the suspicious package, "doesn't appear in the National Pharmaceutical Control System. It's a ghost batch." "How is that possible?" asked Robert. "Doesn't the hospital verify the medications it receives?" "We receive large donations from Nova Pharma regularly. They're the main sponsor of the hospital. Nobody questions the origin of such a generous donation." Emily, who had remained silent until then, approached the packages. "May I see?" she asked, receiving an approving look from the doctor. Carefully, Emily examined the two boxes, turning them from all angles. "The letter A is different on the fake package," she observed. "It's almost imperceptible, but the stroke is thinner." The adults were surprised by the girl's precise observation. Dr. Helen smiled slightly. "You have sharp eyes, young lady." "Doctor, why are you showing us this?" asked Robert. "Because I don't trust anyone in this hospital anymore. 2 weeks ago, a nurse noticed similar discrepancies and reported it to management. The next day, she was transferred to another health unit hundreds of miles from here, and the report she produced mysteriously disappeared." Mike frowned. "Do you think someone in the hospital administration is involved?" "I'm not sure, but I know that since Nova Pharma began sponsoring the hospital, Director Marcus Vincent has become increasingly close to Augustus Miller. They're seen together at social events, play golf at the same club." "And why do you trust us?" questioned Robert. "Because Luke Matthews approached me a month ago, asking similar questions. He suspected that adulterated medications were being distributed through Nova Pharma's charitable donations. And now he's in a hospital bed, suffering a reaction to a suspicious medication right after having an accident. I don't believe in coincidences. Asterisk and alert sounded on the doctor's pager. I have to go, please be discreet. I don't know who else is involved in this. Asterisk. When the doctor left, Robert turned to Emily. Now, do you understand why this situation is dangerous? If they suspect we're investigating... Asterisk. Emily nodded, stroking Rusty, who remained restless. But now we have evidence, Dad. The packages are different. It's not enough, replied Mike. We need to discover the origin of these ghost batches, how they're entering the distribution system. Asterisk. Robert seemed thoughtful. Luke mentioned something about charity events being used as a front. Nova Pharma holds public donations, gains social credit, and among the legitimate donations inserts adulterated products. And then what? Asked Emily. What happens to the fake medicines? They're probably redirected to the black market, sold at high prices. Or worse, they replace essential medications, putting lives at risk while saving on manufacturing. Asterisk. At that moment, a nurse hurriedly entered the office. You can't stay here. This area is restricted. Asterisk. Robert quickly apologized, and they left the hospital. In the parking lot, Emily noticed a black car with the Nova Pharma logo parked near the entrance, with a man in a suit watching them attentively. Dad, whispered Emily, that man is watching us. Asterisk. Robert looked discreetly in the indicated direction. Get in the car normally. Don't show that you noticed. Asterisk. In the vehicle, Mike drove calmly out of the parking lot, while Robert observed through the rearview mirror. He's following us, he confirmed. What do we do now? Asked Emily, feeling her heart accelerate. Let's take a drive, replied Mike, taking an alternative route that led to the busier part of town. Asterisk. Pineville, despite being small, had a relatively active commercial center, especially on Saturdays. Mike skillfully maneuvered through the narrow streets until parking in front of a department store. Let's split up, instructed Robert. Mike, take Emily and Rusty through the main entrance. I'll go through the back and we'll meet at the corner cafe in 20 minutes. Asterisk. Emily held Rusty's leash firmly as she followed Mike through the crowded store. The dog seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, staying silent and close to his owner. After a few turns through the aisles to throw off possible pursuers, they exited through a side door and quickly walked 2 blocks to the agreed-upon cafe. Robert was already waiting for them at a back table, partially hidden by a decorative plant. We managed to lose them for now. What do we do now? Asked Mike. We need concrete evidence, something that definitely connects Nova Pharma to these adulterated medications. Asterisk. Emily, who was stroking Rusty under the table, had an idea. What if we checked when these charity events happen? Dr. Helen said they receive donations regularly. There must be a pattern. Asterisk. Robert looked at his daughter with admiration. That's a good idea, Emily. We can cross-reference the donation dates with the hospital's medication entry records. And how would we get those records? Questioned Mike. Dr. Helen could help, suggested Emily. She seems to trust us. Asterisk. As they discussed the possibilities, Rusty suddenly became alert, his ears perked up. Before they could react, a burly man approached the table. Robert Taylor, he asked in a deep voice. Asterisk. Robert stiffened, instinctively placing himself in front of Emily. Yes? Sheriff Olson, Pineville Police, said the man, discreetly showing a badge. We need to talk urgently, not here. Your police friend is in danger. How do we know we can trust you? Questioned Mike. Luke Matthews is my nephew, and I know what you found at the hospital today. Dr. Helen is my sister-in-law. Asterisk. Robert hesitated for a moment, evaluating the man in front of him. Rusty, surprisingly, approached the sheriff, sniffing him without showing hostility. Looks like your dog trusts him, observed Mike. All right, decided Robert. Where can we talk? At my house. It's the only place I'm sure isn't being monitored. You can follow me in your car. Asterisk. As they left the cafe, Emily noticed that the snow was falling again, once more covering the streets of Pineville with a white blanket. And somewhere in that seemingly quiet small town, someone very powerful now knew they represented a threat that needed to be eliminated. Asterisk. Sheriff Olson's house was located away from the center of Pineville, in a wooded area where properties were distant from each other. The snow was falling gently, transforming the landscape into a perfect winter scene that contrasted with the tension dominating the group. Asterisk. Upon entering, they were welcomed by a cozy living room with a lit fireplace that combated the merciless cold from outside. The sheriff invited them to sit and, without preamble, began to explain the situation. Luke started this investigation almost 6 months ago, he said, serving hot coffee to everyone. At the beginning, they were just suspicions. Numbers that didn't add up, isolated reports of adverse reactions to medications supplied by Nova Pharma. Nothing conclusive. "When did the situation become serious?" asked Robert, while Emily observed, attentively, with Rusty lying at her feet, always vigilant. "When a hospital patient had a severe reaction to a supposedly first-line antibiotic. Luke got the package and sent it for analysis to an independent laboratory in another town. The results showed that the medication contained only 30% of the declared active ingredient." Asterisk. Mike frowned. "And nobody investigated officially?" Asterisk. The sheriff gave a bitter smile. "You know how these small towns work. Augustus Miller practically sustains Pineville. Nova Pharma employs almost a quarter of the population. Who would dare question their benefactor?" "Luke dared," observed Emily. "Yes, young lady. Luke was always too brave for his own good," responded Olson with a heavy sigh. When he began asking more direct questions, the veiled threats began. First, official warnings to not disturb, respectable businessmen. Then his partner was suddenly transferred. Finally, his accident. Asterisk. Robert leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the sheriff. "Why are you telling us this? Why trust us?" "Because Luke told me about you, Taylor. About your investigation in the city that was abruptly interrupted. About how you came dangerously close to discovering the true owners of the operation. And when he found out you were in Pineville, he became hopeful. He believed that together you could finally dismantle this network." "What about the hospital?" asked Mike. "Dr. Helen mentioned medications with ghost batches." "That's how they operate," explained Olson. "Nova Pharma makes large donations of medications to hospitals in the region. Most are legitimate, but about 20% are adulterated products. These are strategically diverted to be sold on the black market for exorbitant prices, or they replace expensive medications in the hospitals themselves, which are then resold outside." "And the charity events?" questioned Emily, remembering the theory they had discussed earlier. Asterisk. The sheriff looked at the girl with admiration. "Perceptive like your father. Yes, the events are the central piece of the operation. Augustus Miller organizes grand parties, benefit galas, always widely publicized. The next day, Nova Pharma trucks deliver generous donations to hospitals and clinics. It's the perfect moment to insert the adulterated batches into the system." "We need concrete evidence," said Robert thoughtfully. "Something that can't be ignored even by the powerful who protect him." "And that's where this comes in," replied Olson, taking a flash drive from his pocket. Luke managed to gather substantial documentation over the past few months. Distribution spreadsheets, batch comparisons, independent chemical analyses. It's all here. He gave it to me the night before the accident, as if foreseeing what would happen. Asterisk. Robert took the flash drive, staring at it as if it were a precious relic. "Is this enough to bring down Augustus Miller?" "Maybe, but he's just the visible face of the operation. There are more powerful people behind it, people with connections in high places. The same people who interrupted your investigation in the city." Asterisk. At that moment, Rusty rose abruptly, his ears perked up, a low growl escaping his throat. "What is it, boy?" asked Emily, stroking the animal's fur to calm him. Asterisk. A second later, they heard the sound of tires skidding on the snow outside, followed by car doors being slammed. Asterisk. The sheriff ran to the window and discreetly peered through the curtains. 3 cars, armed men, he informed in a low but firm voice. "Looks like we've been found." "How?" asked Mike, alarmed. "Nobody followed us." Asterisk. Robert looked at the flash drive in his hand, and then at Emily, who was protectively hugging Rusty. A quick decision needed to be made. "Sheriff, is there an exit through the back?" Yes, a door that leads to the forest, but with this snow we'll leave tracks that are easy to follow. Asterisk Emily stood up, determined. Rusty can guide us. He knows. The forest has instinct for this. Asterisk Robert hesitated, looking at his daughter and then at the sheriff. Are you coming with us? No, replied Olson, drawing his weapon. I'll slow them down. Buy time for you to escape. I have a hunting cabin 2 kilometers east, following the creek. Meet me there. Asterisk. Before they could protest, loud knocks sounded. At the front door. Pineville police, open in the name of the law. Go, ordered the sheriff in a low voice, indicating the back door. And Taylor, protect this evidence with your life. It's our only chance to end this. Asterisk Robert nodded, securing the flash drive in the inner pocket of his coat. Then he took Emily by the hand and followed Mike towards the back exit, with Rusty leading the way. Asterisk. As soon as they stepped out into the cold night, they heard the sound of the front door being broken down, followed by shouts and a brief exchange of words. The sheriff was buying precious time for them. Asterisk. Rusty advanced through the snow with confidence, choosing paths where the snow was less deep, facilitating the group's progression. The forest was silent, only the sound of their breathing and the occasional crack of branches under their feet breaking the silence of the night. Where are we going? Whispered Emily, shivering from cold despite the heavy coat. To the shelter that the sheriff mentioned, replied Robert. We need to find a safe place to analyze this evidence and decide our next step. Asterisk. After what seemed like an eternity walking in the darkness, guided only by the weak light of the moon reflected in the snow and by Rusty's unerring instinct, they finally spotted a small wooden cabin partially hidden among the trees. There, pointed Mike, relieved. Asterisk as they approached, they noticed that the cabin seemed abandoned for some time, but still offered shelter against the relentless cold. Mike forced the door, which yielded with a creak, revealing a simple but welcoming space. Look for something to make a fire, instructed Robert. While checking the perimeter of the cabin. Asterisk, Emily found some dusty blankets in a cabinet, while Mike located dry wood stacked next to a small fireplace. In a short time, a modest fire was crackling, spreading heat and light throughout the environment. Asterisk. Robert took the flash drive from his pocket and looked around. We need a computer to access these files. I have my tablet in my backpack, said Emily, surprising the adults. I always carry it with me. Asterisk Robert smiled at his daughter. You're amazing, you know that. Asterisk Emily took the small tablet from her backpack, turning it on. The battery was almost dead, but it would be enough for a quick analysis of the files. Asterisk. With everyone gathered around the small device, Robert inserted the flash drive and began to examine the documents collected by Luke. What they saw left them speechless. Detailed distribution spreadsheets, photographs of adulterated batches, testimonies from anonymous Nova Pharma employees, comparative chemical analyses, and most impressively, a list of authorities who received bribes to ignore the irregularities. This is much bigger than we imagined, murmured Mike, scanning through the information. It's not just Pineville, it's a statewide operation, maybe national. And look at this, pointed Emily to a specific document. The next big donation is scheduled for tomorrow, after the inauguration event of the hospital's new pediatric wing. Asterisk Robert looked at his daughter with renewed admiration. Emily, you just gave us the perfect opportunity to catch them red-handed. Asterisk. A plan began to form. They would need help, trustworthy people who weren't under Augustus Miller's influence. Dr. Helen would be essential, as would Sheriff Olson if he had managed to escape. Asterisk. While they discussed the details, Rusty, who was lying near the door, rose abruptly, the fur on his neck bristling. Someone's approaching, warned Mike quickly. Turning off the tablet screen. Asterisk, Robert signaled for everyone to be silent, cautiously approaching the window. Through the foggy glass, he could distinguish a solitary figure advancing with difficulty through the snow. It's the sheriff, he whispered, relieved. Asterisk. When they opened the door, Olson quickly entered, shaking the snow from his clothes. His face showed signs of a struggle, with a cut above his eyebrow and a swollen lip. I managed to throw them off for now, he said, gratefully accepting the cup of hot water that Mike offered him. But they know we're in the forest. They're organizing. Search teams. We found something in the files, reported Robert, showing him the discoveries on the tablet. Tomorrow there will be a large delivery after the event at the hospital. Asterisk. The sheriff studied the information carefully. It's our chance. If we can intercept this delivery and prove that part of the medications are adulterated, we'll have enough evidence for an official operation. How will we do that? Asked Emily. The local police aren't on our side. Not all of them, corrected Olson. I have some trusted officers, men and women who haven't allowed themselves to be bought. And with this evidence, he indicated the tablet, I can request support from the state police bypassing the local chain of command. Asterisk. The plan took shape throughout the night. Dr. Helen would be crucial, strategically positioned to receive and verify the donation. Mike would use his mechanical knowledge to ensure no suspicious vehicle escaped. Robert, with his police experience, would coordinate the operation along with Olson. And Emily. Well, Emily insisted on participating. It's too dangerous, argued Robert. You'll stay here in the cabin with Rusty. Dad, I'm the one who discovered about tomorrow's delivery, protested Emily. Besides, no one would suspect a child and her dog. Asterisk. After much discussion, they agreed that Emily could help, but in a controlled and safe manner. She and Rusty would stay with Dr. Helen at the hospital, apparently as volunteers for the charity event, but actually observing and reporting any suspicious activity. Asterisk. The next morning, the small town of Pineville awoke bustling. The inauguration of the hospital's new pediatric wing was the event of the year, with the guaranteed presence of Augustus Miller and other local authorities. Colorful banners decorated the hospital entrance, and a small crowd was already gathering. Despite the persistent cold. Asterisk, Emily and Rusty arrived early, meeting discreetly with Dr. Helen, who provided them with volunteer badges. Robert and Sheriff Olson were strategically positioned at different points, communicating through small and discreet radios. Mike waited in the loading and unloading area, disguised as a maintenance employee. Asterisk. The event began promptly at 10 Indy. The morning. Augustus Miller, a tall and elegant man of approximately 60, eloquently spoke about Nova Pharma's commitment to public health, while photographers recorded every moment. Emily observed everything attentively, impressed by the ease with which that man lied to an audience that admired him. Asterisk. After the speeches and the symbolic ribbon cutting, the guests were taken to a cocktail reception in the main lobby. It was then that Emily noticed movement in the back area. 3 trucks, with the Nova Pharma logo, were entering the service parking lot. Dr. Helen, Emily called discreetly. The trucks have arrived. Asterisk. The doctor nodded, passing the information over the radio. The plan was in motion. Asterisk. While the important guests socialized, at the reception, a team of employees began unloading boxes from the trucks. Mike, in his disguise, casually approached, discreetly photographing the labels and barcodes of the packages with a modified cell phone. Asterisk. Emily, with Rusty always by her side, helped distribute water to the guests, keeping her eyes alert for any suspicious movement. That's when she noticed something strange. One of the drivers was separating some boxes specifically, placing them on a separate cart. Rusty, whispered Emily, bending down to tie her shoelace. Let's investigate those boxes. Asterisk. The dog, as if perfectly understanding, followed Emily as she discreetly moved away from the lobby, heading to the receiving area. Hidden behind a pillar, they observed the driver taking the cart with the separated boxes to a small, isolated room. Asterisk. Emily quickly transmitted the information over the disguised children's radio that the sheriff had given her. Suspect separating boxes in restricted room, East Corridor, door 112. Asterisk. The response came immediately. Received. Do not approach. Repeat. Do not approach. Asterisk. But Rusty had other plans. Suddenly the dog escaped Emily's supervision, running directly to the room where the driver had entered. Emily, in a panic, ran after him. Rusty, come back here. Asterisk. When Emily reached door 112, she found it ajar. Peering through the crack, she saw the driver carefully removing the original labels from the boxes and replacing them with others, apparently identical. Rusty, hidden under a table, was silently observing Dot Asterisk. At that moment, the man noticed Emily's presence. His eyes widened, and he quickly reached for something in his pocket. "What are you doing here, girl?" he asked with a threatening voice. Dot Asterisk. Before Emily could respond, Rusty emerged from his hiding place, placing himself between her and the man, dangerously growling. I was just looking for the bathroom," Emily lied, slowly backing away. Dot Asterisk. The man advanced, but Rusty intensified the growl, baring his teeth. That brief standoff gave enough time for Robert and Sheriff Olson, alerted by the radio, to reach the room. "Police, don't move," ordered Olson, his gun pointed at the man. Dot Asterisk. Robert quickly pulled Emily behind him, protectively placing himself in front of her. "Are you okay?" Asterisk. Emily nodded, hugging Rusty, who had retreated to her side. "He was switching the labels on the boxes, Dad. I saw everything." Asterisk. The operation unfolded quickly from there. The driver was detained, and the boxes with adulterated labels were seized as evidence. Simultaneously, state police agents, who had been contacted by Olson during the night, invaded the reception, surprising Augustus Miller and his associates. Asterisk. The confusion was momentary. Frightened guests, photographers recording the unexpected outcome, and Augustus Miller, the respected benefactor, being escorted out under incredulous stares. Asterisk. Preliminary analyses of the separated boxes confirmed the suspicions. They were adulterated medications, with a concentration of the active ingredient far below what was declared. The scheme was beginning to crumble. Asterisk. In the weeks that followed, the operation expanded. Based on the evidence gathered by Luke, now complemented by the flagrant seizure, investigations were opened in several cities where Nova Pharma maintained similar operations. Corrupt authorities were exposed, and the criminal network that Robert had begun to uncover in the city was finally being dismantled. Asterisk. Luke, recovered from the attack and complications at the hospital, was decorated for his bravery and persistence. Robert was reinstated to the police force with honors, his name finally cleared, and Mike found a new purpose beyond his mechanical garage, becoming a technical consultant for similar investigations. Asterisk. As for Emily and Rusty, they became minor local celebrities. The dog received a symbolic medal of honorary citizen of Pineville, and Emily was recognized for her courage and insight. Asterisk. On a tranquil spring afternoon, when the snow had completely melted, giving way to colorful flowers that dotted the fields, round Pineville, Emily sat on the porch of her house, Rusty lazily lying at her feet. Robert joined her, bringing 2 cups of hot chocolate. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, noticing his daughter's contemplative look. "About how everything has changed since we arrived here. At the beginning, I hated this place. Now it feels like home." Asterisk. Robert smiled, putting his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "You know what I learned from all this? That it doesn't matter where we are, what matters is who we're with. And I have the best company I could wish for." Asterisk. Emily smiled, leaning against her father. Rusty raised his head, looking at the two with those wise and loyal eyes that seemed to understand every word. "We're quite a team, aren't we?" said Emily, stroking the dog's head. "The best team," agreed Robert. Asterisk. In the distance, the sun was beginning to set behind the mountains, tinting Pineville's sky with shades of orange and pink. A new phase was beginning for that small improvised family, a phase of healing, of new bonds, and above all of hope. Because they had proven that, even against the most powerful forces, truth, courage, and loyalty always find a way to prevail. Asterisk. End of story. Asterisk. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Emily, Robert, and the faithful Rusty has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it here by clicking to your left. If you like this narrative, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day, we bring unique stories that explore the